Hello. In this video, I reveal the terror of unspoken grief in an ordinary home. Meet Mara, who polishes counters and sets tables to hold back the void. What hides in her journal's first words is a pain no one admits, turning duty into dread. You will remember this. The morning light filters through the half-drawn blinds, casting long shadows across the kitchen table. Mara moves with practiced efficiency, her hands steady as she pours coffee into mismatched mugs. One for her mother, one for Leo if he ever shows, and the plain white one that sits untouched. The routine anchors her. Slice the bread, arrange the jam jars, wipe down the counters until they gleam. Duty hums in her veins like a quiet engine, keeping the world from tilting. She pauses, cloth in hand, eyes drawn to the empty chair at the head of the table. It's pulled out just a fraction, as if waiting for a late arrival that never comes. Father's chair, the wood gleams from years of polish, but the seat cushion holds no imprint anymore, just space. Mara feels the pull, a subtle tug at the edges of her composure. She should push it in, restore the order, but her gaze lingers, and thoughts creep in unbidden. The way his laugh used to fill this room, the silence that swallowed it whole. The voice in her head, soft, insistent, her own echo from years of careful words, whispers, "Keep the peace, Mara. They've had enough storms." She nods faintly, resuming her tasks, but the obligation feels heavier now, like an extra layer of fog pressing down. As she sets the table, the chair mocks her, a silent reminder of the distances it carves. Leo's calls gone unanswered, Mother's clipped "I'm fines" over tea. How long can she steer around these gaps? Her fingers itch for the journal tucked in her apron pocket, the one Dr. Ramos suggested. Just for thoughts, not confessions. She glances at the clock, still time before Mother wakes. Slipping into the chair opposite the empty one, she opens it, pen hovering. Write the grocery list, or something else? The words form slowly. Today, the quiet hurts more than yelling ever could. Her pulse quickens, a low undercurrent of anxiety threading through the duty. What if these lines spill over, crack the fragile calm? She closes the book, but the question hangs, unspoken. Could she let the mask slip, just for this moment? The empty chair stares back, patient as ever. Later that afternoon, the therapy room felt like a held breath. Soft afternoon light, filtering through half-drawn blinds, casting long shadows across the worn leather armchair where Mara sat, hands folded tightly in her lap. Dr. Priya Ramos leaned forward slightly, her dark eyes steady, voice a gentle current pulling at the edges of Mara's silence. "Mara, you've described the routines, the meals, the checklists that keep everything in place. But what about the feelings that don't fit into those boxes? The ones that linger, uninvited?" Mara's gaze dropped to the floor, her fingers tracing the seam of her sleeve. Duty anchored her here, week after week, not some wild hope of unraveling. "It's manageable," she said, the word flat, a shield. "We don't need to drag it all out, not before the dinner." Dr. Ramos nodded, unhurried, reaching for the therapy journal on the side table. A simple bound notebook, its cover faded blue like forgotten sky. She slid it across the low table between them. "Imagine grief like a river you've dammed up, Mara. The water builds, pressing against the walls you built to protect everyone. Polite, strong walls. But what if just once you let a small stream through? Before that family dinner." Mara's throat tightened, the image stirring something uncoiled inside. Not a flood, but a quiet seep. She resisted, the old lie whispering, "Silence keeps the peace. Yet the doctor's words tugged, shifting the weight from obligation to something fragile, like the first hint of trust in a stranger's hand extended. "What if it breaks everything?" she murmured, her voice barely above the hum of the air conditioner. "Then it rebuilds differently." Dr. Ramos's tone held no pressure, only invitation. "Write it down first. A promise to yourself. Share one piece of that unvoiced pain before the chairs are pulled up to the table. Record it here, in the journal. Let the words find their way to paper before they find their way out." Mara's eyes flicked to the empty chair in the corner of her mind's eye. The one at home, always set for him. Now just a hollow space mocking their careful talk. It felt less like a throne of absence today, more like an invitation to sit differently. A fleeting plan surfaced. A short call to Leo afterward, testing the waters. Her hand hovered over the journal, fingers brushing the cover. Resolve flickered, tentative as dawn, acknowledging the ache, not to shatter, but to share. As the session's end neared, the question hung unspoken in the warm, close air. How would she break the spell of silence before the forks clinked and the empty chair waited? That evening, Mara lingered in the dim hallway of her mother's apartment. The faint hum of the refrigerator, the only sound breaking the evening's hush. She had come to drop off a forgotten scarf. But the door to Leo's old room, now a makeshift guest space, stood ajar. Her brother was inside, packing for his flight back to the city, his back to her as he fiddled with his phone on the dresser. She meant to knock, to call out softly as always, keeping things light. But then his phone buzzed, and before she could retreat, a voice memo app chimed open. Leo didn't notice her shadow in the doorway. He tapped play, sinking onto the edge of the bed with a sigh. The recording crackled to life. Not his voice, but a friend's, laughing from some distant bar. "Come on, man, it's been years. You ever talk about Dad with him?" A pause, then Leo's response, low and ragged, like gravel underfoot. "Every day, but not out loud. I keep thinking if I say it, it'll crack everything open. Mom with her keep strong lines, Mara holding it all together like she's made of stone. But God, I miss him. The way he'd hum off key in the kitchen. Feels like I'm carrying this alone, you know. Like if I let it out, they'll shatter." Mara froze, her hand hovering near the doorframe. Ignorance had been her shield, the assumption that Leo had moved on, untethered from the weight she alone bore. But here it was, spilling from that tiny speaker. His ache, raw and unguarded, mirroring the knot she'd buried deep. Empathy stirred, unbidden, warming the cold edges of her isolation. He wasn't distant by choice. He was adrift, just like her, orbiting the same silent void. Conversation started safe, as always. "The garden's thriving this year," Leo said, swirling his wine. "Remember how Dad used to fuss over those roses?" His voice carried a tentative edge, probing the air. Mara's chest tightened, a familiar duty settling in. She nodded, forcing a smile. He had the greenest thumb. Pass the salt? It was her role. Smooth the edges, keep the peace. But inside, the words she'd scribbled in her therapy journal last night clawed for release. "I miss him, every day." The obligation to shield them all felt heavier tonight, like an anchor dragging her under. Her mother cleared her throat sharply. "Green thumb or not, life's for moving forward. Hand me the potatoes, dear." The interruption sliced clean, redirecting to the platter's path. Leo's shoulders sagged, but he tried again, softer. "It's just, sometimes I wonder if we..." Plenty of time for wonders after dessert. Her mother cut in, voice clipped as old newsprint. "And Leo, how's that job of yours? Steady now?" The pivot was effortless. a well-worn shield against the undercurrent. Mara's hand paused mid-reach for the bread. She could feel it, the pull to intervene, to echo her mother's briskness and bury the moment. "Yeah, Leo, tell us about the project," she said, the words tasting like ash. Duty one, as it always did, wrapping the table in banal chatter about deadlines and weather. But beneath her steady gaze, anxiety stirred, a low hum rising in her veins. What if she didn't stop it next time? What if the words spilled out, shattering the fragile order? The empty chair loomed in her periphery, its vacancy echoing the space in her chest. Leo glanced at it too, then away. Her mother droned on about resilience, oblivious or armored. Mara's fork trembled slightly against her plate, the weight of unspoken grief pressing harder. How long could she keep playing sentinel before the silence cracked her open? After the meal, in the quiet that followed, the living room floor felt like a forgotten map. Scattered with faded albums Mara had pulled from the attic shelf. She sat cross-legged, her fingers tracing the edges of a photo. Dad at the barbecue, apron smeared with sauce, grinning as if the world owed him nothing. Leo sprawled beside her, elbows propped on knees, his gaze distant but hooked. "Remember this one?" Mara said, voice steady as she held it up. The summer of '98, all of them crammed on the porch swing, laughter frozen in emulsion. "You were obsessed with that frisbee. Dad had to chase it into the neighbor's yard 3 times. Leo chuckled, low and quick, but his eyes lingered on the empty space beside their mother in the frame. "Yeah, he always played along, like it was the most important thing." He flipped a page, revealing a snapshot of the family at the lake. Dad's arm around Leo's shoulders, both squinting into the sun. The paper crinkled under his thumb, a small protest. Mara's chest tightened, the old knot pulling. She wanted to steer back to the light parts, the ones that didn't ache. But Leo's silence stretched, heavy as the album's weight in her lap. "You left right after that summer," she murmured, not accusing, just stating the fact like a date on a calendar. Anxiety flickered in her throat. What if naming it cracked everything open? He nodded, not looking up. "Couldn't stay. Felt like pretending was the only way." His voice dipped, raw at the edges. The photo of Dad teaching him to fish stared back, hook glinting like a question mark. Leo's hand hovered, then pressed flat against it. "I miss him yelling at me to cast right. And I miss us not saying it." Her breath caught, the room's quiet pressed in, the empty chair across the room a shadow in her periphery. Mara swallowed, the words bubbling up unbidden. "Me too. I keep thinking if I'd just talked then, maybe it wouldn't feel so hollow now." She met his eyes, the anxiety easing into something warmer, a tentative bridge. Leo's nod was small, but it met hers halfway. They turned another page, the images blurring slightly as memories overlapped, vivid, insistent. The photographs lay between them, threads pulling at the seams of what they'd left unsaid. That same night, with the echoes of the photographs still lingering, the kitchen light hummed softly, casting long shadows across the cluttered table where dinner plates still sat. Crumbs of uneaten bread, mocking the evening's forced civility. Mara lingered in the dim living room, the empty chair at the far end a silent accusation. Her mother's clipped, "We're fine, dear," echoed in her ears, that familiar wall slamming down before any real words could form. Heart pounding with the weight of unspoken years, Mara pulled out a notebook, her therapy journal, its pages already scarred with half-formed truths, and began to write. "Dear Mom," she scrawled, the pen digging into the paper like roots seeking soil. "I can't keep pretending. Dad's gone, and it's tearing me apart inside. Every dinner, every glance at that chair. I miss him. We all do. Why can't we say it? The words spilled out, raw and unpolished, her hand trembling as memories flooded. Dad's laugh filling the room, now replaced by this hollow quiet. But as the letter grew, doubt coiled in her chest. What if this shattered everything? Mom's face, etched with lines of endurance, cracking under the pressure. Another family fracture she couldn't mend. She imagined the outburst, the rejection, the boat rocking so hard it capsized. The pen hovered, ink blotting the page. Tear it up? Fold it away like all the rest? Her phone buzzed on the coffee table, a reminder notification from last week's session. Dr. Ramos's voice played in her mind, calm and steady. Your voice isn't a weapon, Mara. It's the bridge you've been afraid to build. Silence protects no one. It just widens the gap. Priya's eyes had held hers then, gentle but insistent, urging her to claim the space grief demanded. Mara exhaled, the knot in her throat loosening just a fraction. She wasn't attacking, she was reaching. The words on the page weren't betrayal. They were her first real step, trusting that her truth might echo back. She folded the letter carefully, slipping it into an envelope, her fingers lingering on the seal. Not tonight, but soon. The question burned. Would she mail it tomorrow, letting her voice finally cut through the quiet? The empty chair watched, waiting. The following evening, tension simmered as the clink of silverware against plates filled the dining room, a fragile rhythm holding the family in place. Mara passed the mashed potatoes to her mother, her movements precise, as if any deviation might unravel the evening. The empty chair at the head of the table loomed like a shadow, its cushion undisturbed, a silent sentinel to the absence that no one named. Leo sat across from her, his fork scraping idly, eyes flicking toward that void. Pass the salt, please, Mother said, her voice clipped, the words a barrier as solid as the oak table. Conversation had stayed safe. Weather, Leo's latest work trip, Mara's garden updates. Restraint wrapped them all, a well-worn coat against the chill of what lay unsaid. Leo set down his fork. You know, I was going through some old emails the other day, he began, his tone casual but edged, like a door creaking open. Dad's last one to me. He was proud, but I keep wondering what I never said back. His gaze drifted to the empty chair, not accusatory, but searching, as if it held the answers he'd carried alone for years. Mother's hand froze mid-reach for her water glass. That's the past, Leo. We've moved on. Resilience is what he would want. Her words landed sharp, a door slamming shut, her face tightening into the mask Mara knew too well, the one that equated emotion with defeat. Leo's jaw clenched, the outburst brewing in the furrow of his brow. Moved on? It's been 2 years, Mom. I lost more than a father that day. We all did. Pretending otherwise just... He gestured vaguely toward the chair, his voice rising, cracking the polite veneer. The air thickened, plates forgotten, the room pulsing with the heat of words finally unchained. Mara's heart hammered, duty pulling her one way. Nod, change the subject, preserve the peace. While a deeper ache urged her forward. The empty chair seemed to lean in, its vacancy no longer just a gap, but an invitation, pulling at her like the photographs they'd pored over earlier. Leo's eyes met hers, pleading without words. Say something. Her throat burned with the weight of it all. The suppressed sobs, the nights she'd journaled alone. Silence had been her shield, but now it felt like chains. She opened her mouth, the words hovering on her tongue, teetering between retreat and release. Would she let them spill, or swallow them back into the quiet that had defined them for so long? In that charged moment, the dining room light hung low, casting long shadows across the table where the empty chair waited like a ghost in broad daylight. Mara's hands trembled on the edge of her plate, the remnants of dinner congealing into forgotten shapes. Leo sat across from her, his eyes sharp with that recent rawness from the voicemail she'd overheard, his own confession echoing in her mind. Her mother, at the head, fiddled with a napkin, her posture a fortress of clipped resolve. Mara's throat tightened, the words clawing up from nights she'd spent alone in this room, staring at that chair. Doubt coiled in her chest. What if this shattered everything? The family's peace, fragile as cracked porcelain, had been her anchor. But the ache, the incurable longing for the father who once filled that space, burned hotter than fear now. She couldn't bear another meal where silence swallowed them whole. I sit here at night, she said, her voice a quiet fracture in the hush. Heads turned. Leo leaned forward, mother's napkin stilled. With his chair, empty. And it's not just absence. It's like the grief is trapped, pressing against my ribs until I can't breathe. I've been so afraid to say it. Afraid it'll tear us apart, make everything worse. But holding it in, it's killing me, killing us. Her mother's lips parted, then pressed thin, a tremor rippling through her clasped hands. Mara, we've managed. Strength is in moving on. No, Mother. Managing isn't living. The words spilled freer now, doubt giving way to a tentative openness, like cracking a window to let air rush in. Mara's gaze flicked to the chair, its vacancy no longer just a seat, but a mirror to their shared void. I've lied to myself that silence protects us. But it doesn't. It just leaves this hole. And I'm tired of pretending it's not there. Leo reached across, his fingers brushing hers, a spark of solidarity, their bond tightening in the vulnerability. I felt it too, he murmured, voice thick. Her mother's eyes glistened, the fortress cracking. But she said nothing, the air thick with the storm they all sensed brewing. Mara held her breath, the question unspoken but electric. Could they cross this line, name the loss together, or would the old taboo pull them back into the quiet? As the confession settled, the dining room light hung heavy, casting long shadows across the table where the empty chair sat like a silent sentinel. Mara's words still echoed faintly. Nights staring at that void, the ache of unspoken law. The air thickened, a fragile pause after her confession. Leo shifted in his seat, his fingers tracing the edge of a faded photograph from the album splayed open before them. His eyes, usually distant, now locked on the chair. I've been gone for years, Leo said, voice low but steady, cutting through the quiet like a crack in ice. But it wasn't just leaving home. It was detaching. Every call I skipped, every visit I dodged, it was me pulling away because facing this— He gestured vaguely at the table, the chair. Felt like drowning. Dad's gone, and I couldn't say it without feeling like I'd shatter everything. Mara watched him, her chest tightening. The alienation she'd sensed in him all evening sharpened into something raw, shared. Their mother sat rigid across from them, hands clasped, white-knuckled around her teacup, her lips pressed thin. The room teetered. Would they lean in, or retreat into the old walls of polite deflection? The elderly woman's gaze flickered to the empty chair, then away, as if it might swallow her whole. A tremor ran through her shoulders, subtle at first, then undeniable. I thought strength meant holding it all in, she murmured. the words stumbling out like stones from a clenched fist. If I let it show, if I cried or spoke his name too loud, you'd see me as weak. And then what? The family falls apart? Her voice cracked, not in sobs, but in the quiet unraveling of a long-held armor. For the first time, her eyes met Leo's, direct, unguarded. Leo reached across the table, his hand hovering near hers. She didn't pull away. Mara felt the shift, a warmth blooming in the space her words had carved. The empty chair no longer loomed as accusation. It breathed with them now, an invitation. Alienation ebbed, giving way to this tentative acknowledgement, fragile as new skin. But could they keep it open? The question lingered in the air, unanswered. As the three of them sat there, hands inching closer, the weight of shared grief finally finding room to settle. The next evening, in the wake of those revelations, the dining room light hung soft, casting long shadows across the table where the empty chair had once loomed like a ghost. Now it was gone, pulled away earlier that evening after Mara's words had cracked the air open. Mara sat at the head, her palms damp against the wood, heart thudding with the echo of confessions. Leo's admission of his hollow detachment, their mother's trembling reveal of her fear-cloaked silence. The meal was cleared, plates stacked in uneasy quiet, but no one moved to rise. Leo shifted first, his fingers brushing Mara's on the table's edge. She froze, the old instincts surging. Pull back. Let the moment slip into familiar numbness. Was this too much? The habit of survival whispered to retreat. Nod politely, clear the dishes, pretend the ache hadn't surfaced. Their mother's hand hovered nearby, knuckles white from years of gripping secrets, eyes darting as if weighing the risk of touch against the safety of solitude. Yet Mara didn't withdraw. Instead, she turned her palm up, inviting. Leo's hand met hers, warm and tentative, calluses from distant labors grounding the connection. Their mother hesitated, breath catching, then extended her own, linking the circle. Hands clasped around the table, rough, soft, trembling, forming a fragile chain that spanned the space once filled by absence. The uncertainty lingered in the air, thick as the scent of cooling stew. Mara's pulse raced. Would this dissolve into old roles, the stoic nods and averted gazes? Leo's grip tightened slightly, his eyes meeting hers with a flicker of doubt, mirroring her own. What if vulnerability shattered them further? Their mother exhaled, a small sound, her fingers curling in as if testing the weight of shared warmth. But then, breath synchronized. Inhale, exhale. Ragged at first, then steady, weaving through the silence not as barrier, but as breath itself. No words rushed in. The feeling bloomed inward, a quiet acceptance settling like dusk. Mara's chest eased. The vulnerability she'd feared now, a steady anchor, pulsing through their joined hands. Grief wasn't hidden anymore. It thrummed in the contact, a shared rhythm promising something honest, if they dared hold on. The circle held, hands intertwined, as the night deepened. Would they carry this into tomorrow, or let habit pull them apart? The question hung, unspoken, in the gentle press of skin.